Well, hello, everyone around the world. I hope you're having a magnificent day, whether it's the evening, morning, or afternoon, wherever you are. I am coming live from sunny Puerto Rico. For those of you who are in the snowstorms of this past week, I'm sorry. So I have an amazing guest today, and it's a big surprise from that intro, but it is the amazing Tracy MacDonald. Let's welcome her to the stream. Hello, Tracy.
Hi, Christina. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. This is long and coming because you were one of our guest speakers at the Women Getting Visible show in Washington, D.C. So I'm so happy to have you here today. And tell us a little bit more about you and where you're calling in from today.
Absolutely. Well, I'm in that snowstorm that you mentioned, and I'm so envious that you're in a warm climate. I'm sitting in Arlington, Virginia, just outside of Washington, D.C., and our family is a Foreign Service family with the U.S. State Department, and we've just returned from 4 missions with the U.S. Embassy overseas, all in warm climates. So I have not acclimated to the snow.
And what a January it is on record breaking this year. So it's incredible. Well, I love your story. You have so much of an interesting background from your risk and fraud protection. And, the title of it is The Voices in Visibility from Invisible Circles, because some of what you have done in your life has been in the background. So tell us a little bit about your experience of where you have come from.
Absolutely. I started out in banking as a Southern female and continued my path in male dominated circles by joining the Secret Service. So I moved from working anti fraud in credit card transactions, and 9/11 happened, and the hijackers were using Bank of America cards, which were being processed by the company that I was with called Total System. So I met with the Secret Service early in my banking career, and they said, we need women with banking and with foreign languages. And so it just turned out that it was a great fit for me. I had seen in college the film Silence of the Lambs, where Jodie Foster was one of the first female agents portrayed on screen, and I wanted to be her. And then I interned with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, and it turned out I couldn't stomach the crime scene photos. So once I understood Secret Service's mission and that they worked white collar crime, primarily nonviolent crimes, it was a really great alignment. And so I stepped into that role and I learned a lot, mainly that we don't need to act like men to lead like women. It took me a long time to find my voice and to step into that truth that you can still be a strong leader and wear your sundresses and have those softer skills and still get your point across and still be taken seriously and find your voice.
What was the impetus? What was fascinating about? I mean, yes, the movie, but was there something that really just took you into that? I need to do this. This is such important work to do because it's a different path than a lot of people would even think about taking.
It is, and I was always fascinated with the criminal mind. My degree when I left college was in sociology, and I had taken a lot of abnormal psychology and sociology courses about social mores and people who break them. And it was kind of fascinated, I think, because I was such a rule follower and from a very Southern conservative family. Um, Two, I'm really grateful to my mother, who she was from Michigan and had wanted to be a lawyer, but when she grew up, it was sort of outside the norm to do those things. So she really encouraged me to not get boxed into what we consider male dominated fields, and just to pursue my passions.
Yeah. And I love what you said too, is when how many of times I've seen it, growing up in Cleveland, where women suddenly are working in male-dominated areas, hair cut short, hair pulled back, a little less makeup, and just kind of fitting in and trying to be invisible in some of the roles so that you don't get singled out. So I think that's an interesting take that you said of like, okay, I can be in my feminine and still be in these roles. And I think that for women in particular, that's such an important thing to see. I think about one of the FBI agents I knew, and every time I see her right after work, she had her shoulder pads on and her suit. And it took her a few minutes to come back down to just like, oh, take that jacket off and, take off those sensible shoes
Right?
to come back into that world. Yeah, yeah. And so tell us a little bit about that transition for yourself, because I think that's an important thing for women to hear.
It is important. And it wasn't right away. I had kind of an identity crisis where I was marching around like a guy. And you're wearing a weapon and you're in a dark suit and it all seems very kind of masculine. And there were not a lot of female role models for me. It was only 10% women when I joined. And around me, and unfortunately, instead of banding together as women, it was kind of cutthroat competitive, which had never been the case in my personal life. My girlfriends were always my rock and my foundation. So I went into it a bit naive, thinking, oh, well, the other women will help me. And that was not the case for me at my field office. But learning to embrace the feminine advantage came out through just living it. For example, I wasn't as rough and tough when we arrested people. They were still criminals. I wasn't treating them like gentlemen. They were still thugs, but I wasn't getting physically rough with them and I wasn't cursing. And, my SAC finally, special agent in charge, finally came to me one day and he said, my maiden name is Knight. They never use your first name. So he said, Knight, I just want you to know that you're not as rough as these other agents, but you are a flower amongst the weeds here. You've gotten just as many arrests, just as many criminal, confessions out of these people. And it really started when I realized it was to my advantage that often the criminals didn't know I was a federal agent when we were in undercover operations because I was a petite female. And then when I would arrest them, they were more likely to open up to me because I was more approachable than the other agents. And so I really learned to use my femininity to my advantage.
The knight in shining armor, I hear.
Yes.
Oh, I love it. And that's one of the things that, I find with so many women, especially in what I'm doing now, is that such a different way of communicating. And where men, in this in particular, will come straight at you for the sale, straight at you with the just directness, where we as women are more communicative, much more, oh, okay, let's know, like, trust each other. Let's get some understanding. And just like you said, yeah, it's a criminal, but maybe we can deal with this a little softer in a different way that you can get the things that you need to get done and understand the situation. And I love that because it is a gift that we have as women, is that communication skills. And sounds like you've done amazing with it.
Thank you. Well, I think
Yeah.
it took
So
exercising the muscle of getting outside your comfort zone and doing it again and again until it became comfortable. I wasn't confident in embracing my femininity right away, but it was an evolution.
and then your life became very different over the last decade plus. And can you share a little bit about that with us? Because I find that story, and I don't want to even spoil it. I want you to hear it from you.
Absolutely. Well, I got to the point where I realized the lifestyle of the Secret Service was no longer aligning with my personal goals. I believed in the mission, but just these hours and the fast-pacedness and the eating too much fast food because I never had time to sit down to have a meal, and I was missing weddings and funerals. And, as I got older, I realized all of these things that I was missing out on were really important to me in my life. And so I stepped away from the Secret Service, but then used my clearance to come up here to DC. And I was teaching counterterrorism for defense intelligence with a consulting group called Booz Allen. And I really loved it, following the money to still shut down the criminal element, but in a different capacity. And I met my husband, and he was a federal agent, but for the State Department. And we got married and ended up moving overseas and started our diplomatic life. So with an 18-month-old in tow, our first mission was in Baban, Swaziland, now renamed Eswatini. And I had worked since high school and didn't have a baby until I was 40. So being dropped into a very remote area of Africa with a child and no job, I really had to reinvent myself and learn to find validation other than places that had been familiar to me. My job, my community, my friends, my hobbies, all of that had been stripped away. And I really had to dig deep and figure out how to start over.
And see, I find that so fascinating. Again, back to becoming invisible in a different way is figuring out yourself. Talk about invisibility. There's so many different levels and like just being out on stage. But what we go through internally, and just like you said, everything stripped away, this new identity, a new mother, a new country, and just a whole new life experience. I can't even imagine what that became like. So who was your support during this time as you were transitioning into this lifestyle?
Well, luckily with our technology, I definitely was reaching back across the borders through FaceTime and other platforms to reach my friends and family who knew me, who were a great sense of support. But also when you join the Foreign Service, there's the U.S. Embassy community, some military, some other elements that are embedded with your U.S. Embassy mission. So we automatically had a group of people around us. Now, they were all new to us, and my husband was going off to work and got to know his colleagues very well. It took me longer because I had to sort of figure out how to get out and engage with this new community. And then beyond the circle of the U.S. Embassy, how to meet expats and where to find locals, and just start to rebuild a sense of community. But I think really what was familiar to me is I've always believed in mentoring other women. And what I could do is there were a bunch of young wives who were military with us at the embassy who had new babies, and they were also moving abroad, sometimes for the first time or early in their spouse's career. And I loved mentoring them, sitting down with them to say, I'm sure this feels scary. I had done a lot of traveling and living abroad through college and in my career before I met my husband. But, for someone who's never left the country, and here they are in a remote area, it was nice to be able to kind of reassure them and be a rock for others. And that helped me too. By trying to lift them up, it kept me in a more positive mindset of we're going to figure this out.
Oh, I absolutely love that story. We're going to continue this after this short break.
Share your story, own your name, step in the light, ignite your flame, show up, shine out, it's time to be heard, flip fear into power with every word, visibility, accountability, we write a wild new legacy.
and thank you for that. And women getting visible here, we are supporting our women on all paces and places of their journey, whether you're moving fast, whether you're moving slow, whether you're at the beginning or getting on stages. And you, my friend, are doing some amazing things and getting yourself out there. So I want to go into that in just a moment, but continue sharing the story of where you are in that journey of being that rock for people. In that total lifestyle, you had an opportunity because you traveled, being someone, the rock for others who hadn't traveled as much. I remember you talking about this very first time is being able to commune with nature a little bit, because you don't have the conveniences of the American lifestyle when you're living in these remote countries in Africa and all the conveniences. What's one big lesson that you take from your time?
To create a sanctuary for myself, a space that felt safe amidst all of this unfamiliarity, where no matter what was going on, the foreign languages, the new culture, when everything else felt new to me, yes, I could go outside, I could take nature walks and connect with the foliage. And it gave me some consistency no matter which country we were in, to go and commune with nature. I love nature photography. So getting behind the lens and even focusing on small details like a water droplet on a flower petal. It was almost a meditative practice for me, along with journaling and watercolors and picking up hobbies that I had not been in touch with since before college, because as I mentioned, I had worked until then. And so it was really a process of rediscovery of what brought me joy. And I needed something that was just for me, outside of being a mother and a wife and this new role as a diplomat, where you have, new demands put on you. I love hosting and I love meeting people, but it's a lot of protocol and a new environment within which to operate. So when all of these changes were going on, I found, even if it was, I didn't have a room to myself, as Virginia Woolf would say, but even just a corner, even if I just set up a candle on a dining room table and listened to a playlist that was familiar, or just tried to have those talisman and touchstones that brought me something familiar that was grounding.
Wow. And, it was 13 years that you were living abroad. To come back to the United States with all the amenities we have here, all the gifts that we have in our everyday life, position, coming back to this side of the world, not the country, this side of the world.
That's a great question, Christina, and you might be surprised by the answer. I think the grass is always greener, right? When I was our last post was West Africa, where it could take me hours to go to different market stalls and different places to gather recipes, for example, ingredients for one recipe. Running errands was not easily done. And here I jump in my car, I'm on well-paved roads. I can go to the grocery store, I can get all the sundries that I need, I can go to the dry cleaners and be home in 90 minutes. And the conveniences of America are amazing. But I'll tell you, there is a lot of reverse culture shock in that we have completely cut out the middleman. All of my commercial shopping feels very transactional in America, where in these other countries, we were in all developing countries, Egypt, Honduras, East and West Africa, where I was used to buying pineapples from the farmers that grew it. And I was used to having contact with the locals so much more. And I just missed that personal exchange coming back here. amongst other things. When I think, especially as any woman and as a mom, when you're just trying to rebuild a stable home for your family, even though we have all these conveniences in America, we were still dealing with the emotions of a 13-year-old who'd been through a military coup and sent to boarding school, who was returning and going to public school for the first time as a true third culture kid. And so there were a lot of dynamics inside my home that were a challenge emotionally, just trying to get everyone up and running and happy. It still takes effort, even in the United States.
Yeah. And it's so, I mean, my own life experience with the Philippines, I understand completely what you're talking about. Those pieces and the culture and the sentiment of somebody who's making your meal for you when you go out to a restaurant, that is completely their livelihood, what they're getting things right from the market to give you that gift that they've made for you, versus, oh, we've got it, our delivery guy, he plops it on the stove and here it is for you. You're right, there's so much that's left behind that we don't have in this country, and those beautiful pieces of life, and that is just so dreamy. And now you're acclimating in just this past year, because it hasn't even been a full year that you've been back, is that correct? Yeah.
No, we just got back this fall.
Yeah. So what would be the one biggest surprise that you have felt within yourself and your own growth as you've come back this time?
I think I thought I was going to drop in here and re-engage with my consulting network, but because of the current landscape of work in the DC area, the federal government space has really contracted. And so just once again, I didn't expect to reinvent myself so much on US soil. So that's been a big surprise, but delighted by the number of great women that I've met through LinkedIn networking, through wonderful events like Women Getting Visible, when I was with you for that weekend. And it's really been a pleasure to be able to be in the same time zone and in a big city where these kinds of leadership and summits and forums are happening, and just the ease of connecting to new people in my network. And I'm delighted by that. I think, as we get older, when I was younger, I'll speak for myself, but I think for many people, you want to make a big splash when you're young, and it's all about what you can achieve. And as we get older, I definitely have a wider aperture where I love the success of the collective, the bigger whole of my female network. And I'm more interested, instead of making a big splash, deriving a lot of satisfaction out of the smaller wins, the ripple effect, and just the exchange of positivity. Women like you, women that we know in common, that are really just looking to uplift other women. And that has been a delight.
Yes. And I'm with you. I know some of those ladies we know in common, and they're absolutely incredible. And, I like to call some of them cheerleaders, because they're like, yes, what are you going to do next? Share. I want to share with you. I want to know and celebrate and be with you. And with that, I want to celebrate you, because you are moving into more speaking engagements. Tell us about that, because I think that's so exciting for you.
Thank you. I have really enjoyed it. When we had to send my child to boarding school and I was back and forth to the States, I really took advantage of speaking at my alma mater. I really believe in shaping the future generations in leadership. It's so important to share your experiences. And a lot of it was initially pro bono. I spoke at my own college, and then I spoke to Georgia Military College at their Women's Leadership Conference, and loved connecting with the students. And just that exchange of ideas, and even if you can help one person, because, for example, you would think, and these military women, they are powerhouses, mentally, physically, they're amazing, but a lot of them were deploying for the first time. And the question I didn't expect after I had spoken to them about being in male dominated fields and going and doing was, how do I leave the base and get out in a new country and figure out what's safe and what isn't? And it's just something that, because I've traveled so much since my days in college, you forget about those feelings and that anxiety that can happen as a woman navigating the world on your own.
Yeah. And again, you are so full, this life experience. I mean, you're not just talking about one book. We're talking chapter books of your life experience and the things that you have to offer. I'm sure you have more than one signature talk, but what is your favorite talk that you want to share out there with everyone?
It's really about worthiness, that worthiness, you don't have to earn it. I think women, we do so much more asking permission than men do. We need, for some reason, that validation. And just to say that you add value just by waking up in the world, and instead of trying to shrink and fit in, as you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, not to be invisible, to find your voice, to take an equal seat at the table, to embrace your feminine advantage, and just to remember that you're already worthy. You don't have to, glorify the hustle of being busy and we're trying to be more of a human being than a human doing. And I love going out because a lot of the women, as you know, that are in these leadership summits, they are high achievers, they are high performers, and they're more likely than others to burn out. And so too, to get out there and say that self-care is not selfish, and make sure that you're factoring yourself into the equation and not, immediately throwing out those yoga classes and coffees with friends because they seem, superfluous. Those are just as important as your doctor's appointments and your meetings.
Yes, 100%. And I love what you just said, a human being versus a human doing. Your worthiness. Oh my goodness. Tracy, if someone wants to find out more about you or connect with you, what is the best way that they can get in touch with you?
I would love it if someone could connect through LinkedIn or on my blog. I think we'll be putting those in the show notes. My foreign service travels, I documented many of them on Carpe Diem Creative. But also, I'm really excited to share that I have a nonfiction chapter that will be published in an anthology by Red Thread Publishing later in 2026. And then two, I've just finished a fiction manuscript that is with an editor, and I hope to be getting that out into the world in 2027. So a lot of great things on the docket. I'll be pitching to TEDx U Street Women here in Washington, D.C. on February 21st. And it's a competition to see who gets to the big TED stage, but I feel like I've already won just by becoming a finalist. So that's a big personal achievement for me.
That is so exciting. And when that book is published, we're going to have to bring you back on and celebrate it and see all the wins that you've had since today till then.
I would love that. Thank you.
Absolutely. So if you want to meet Tracy, go find Tracy MacDonald on LinkedIn. If you're following me on LinkedIn, she's one of my friends and my connections, and I'm so happy to know her. Tracy, thank you so much for joining us today. You have been, as always, amazing and warm every time I get a chance to talk to you.
Thanks, Christina. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and your listeners today.
Great. All right, my friends, and we will see you next time.
Who's up next in the Golden Chair? Join us next week. I'm your host, Christina Vidovich of Women Getting Visible.